In a shady clearing, King Arawi sat on a plastic chair, his golden jewelry and crown glinting in the baobab tree dappled sunlight. This broad-trunk tropical tree was of the silk cotton family, native to Africa. It has an edible acidic fruit resembling a gourd, and its bark was used in making paper, cloth and rope. Indeed, the king's distinctive golden headdress was partly made of this bark, and surrounded by his tribe he spoke through the traditional speaker who held a staff topped with a big carved wooden figurine, his face painted with white chalk polka dots.
We are gathered here, men, wives and children, to celebrate and protect the courage and bravery of our warriors. Tomorrow they will leave us to fight in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Their success there will bring great wealth, unimaginable wealth to this tribe, and we shall all prosper for generations to come.
Scratched his chest, the long bullet belts lay heavy on his shoulders and dug into his skin. He remembered the screening of Rambo First Blood that he had watched with friends in Lomé last year and smiled to himself.
I'll give you what you won't believe,
he chuckled. A friend slapped him on the arm and pointed to the corner that the jeep was approaching. It looked to Emmanuel like an overgrown termite's nest, but as the jeep turned he could see clearly a mound of naked bodies. The jeep slowed down as they approached the Stade de Martyr, the rendezvous for his company with the forces of the rebel leader and son of the current president, Joseph Kabila. Men wearing fatigues, red armbands and berets shouted and waved as they approached. The driver stopped the engine and Emmanuel jumped over the side of the vehicle with the rest of his unit. Other jeeps and armor trucks were pulling into the stadium car park now, and the familiar faces of his tribesmen began piling out of them. The waving and shouting had not stopped. The French language of the Congolese sounded like obscure noise to Emmanuel at first, but soon it became clear that an urgent communication was at hand.
It's happening now.
He understood.
Weapons over here.
His commander called to the unit to gather around the munitions vehicle, and the crowd of men followed loyally. A Congolese soldier began furiously throwing AK-47s from the back of the vehicle into the crowd, and another dumped boxes of bullets at the Togolese mercenaries' feet. Another distributed rocket-propelled grenade launchers, flash grenades and other explosive ordnance. After taking as many grenades as he could fit in his pockets, Emmanuel followed the rest of his unit back to the jeep. Now he really felt like Rambo. The convoy split. The jeep pulled away down a residential street, the buildings decorated with bullet holes. Emmanuel began to discern the particular rattle of automated gunfire, breaking the uncanny silence of the city. The jeep slowed to a halt as they approached a corner gas station, deserted. A shout ordered him back over the side of the vehicle, and he moved as one with his unit onto the opposite side of the road. The presidential mansion was half a mile away, but the sound of the gunfire felt strangely close. Following their commander, the unit ran, hunched and scattered, through a labyrinth of dusty alleyways. When they arrived at the thick stone walls surrounding the presidential mansion, the commander ordered the men behind him to fire 3 rockets into the masonry, blasting vast chunks of matter meters into the air and creating a gaping entrance into the once heavily manicured gardens. Sirens screamed and the president's defense machine gun outposts jerked into life, directing their fire at the hole, desperately seeking targets. The commander barked an order into the crowd of warriors behind him, and Emmanuel was passed an RPG launcher by a soldier in front of him. He was boosted onto the low balcony of a nearby home and swiftly climbed up onto the roof, swiveling into position. He took aim and swiftly dispatched a rocket. It roared upwards on a pillar of fiery smoke, stabbing through the cloudless sky before falling directly into the machine gun outpost, annihilating it with unerring accuracy.
I'll give you what you won't believe.
His friends cheered and shouted. Emmanuel jumped down and ran forward through the hole in the wall with the other men, all shouting and firing scattered shots in the direction of the mansion. They could hear a cacophony of gun rattle coming from the other side of the building. The tactical split had paid off. Their outroute to the building was barely guarded at all as Emmanuel's shot had taken out the only thing that prevented their access. Emmanuel raised his AK-47 and set off at a sprint towards the mansion, knowing his comrades would be close behind and that the capture of the building would earn a great reward. He wove a zigzag course towards the entrance, pools of burning fuel and wrecked machinery forcing him into frustrating detours. After years of creeping through the Togolese forests, it was a cathartic release of his fury to be amidst such brutality. The air was thick with death. Bullets whipped the ground around Emmanuel's feet. The defense from the front had obviously split. He heard someone shout, seeing government soldiers firing at him furiously from the windows and corners of the building. He could not slow down, his feet carried him all the way as if guided by fate. He stormed up the steps leading to the back entrance, shooting 3 guards in one swathe of hot lead. He knelt down below a window ledge and pulled off one of the bullet belts that hung across his shoulders, noticing the many deep red pock marks that flecked his naked chest. As Emmanuel pushed the now fully loaded clip back into position, he heard a voice from inside the building shout. Fire! This time there was no language barrier. He shouted at the men running up the stairs to fall back and take cover. As soon as the message was understood, the rocket exploded, gouging out a great tear in the back wall, just meters from Emmanuel's position. The noise was deafening. Emmanuel could see tiny shards of glass flying through the air around him. He could feel them cutting into his skin, but eerily could not hear their twinkling return to ground. Emmanuel silently screamed, jumping into the window and firing viciously on the group of startled soldiers before him. As Emmanuel stared into a lifeless room, bodies limp on the rubble floor, he stopped, apprehended by its peculiar calm unraveled in his superiority. Adrenaline locked in soon enough and he climbed through the window, breaching the mansion. His comrades rushed in through the settling smoke of umber ash but were confronted by their next obstacle, a large iron door, like something you would see protecting a safe in a bank. Calling the men to stand back, he carefully rolled a grenade at its hinge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The blast hit his ears like a freight train and the door disappeared into heavy smog. Lethal shrapnel sighed the air. Emmanuel felt a dagger slice through his hip. He expected pain but instead felt a total loss of sensation, which seemed to him doubly terminal. Falling to his feet, he breathed heavily, gulping in the air like it was water. Others fell, some did not, and entered the doorway. He watched as their groaning bodies faded into smoke.